Welcome to the World
Uncle.
Builders Anvil.
Uncle.
Season 2.
Uncle.
Episode 3.
Uncle.
Believe in yourself.
Uncle. Uncle.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the muck of Java and build. Welcome back. Watching Michael uncling himself as always. My name is Jeffrey W. Ingram.
I said uncle. And with sore elbows and shoulders, my name is Michael Miller. And that's not far off the truth because I am very sore today. Not from Jeff beating me up and making me say uncle, though.
No, this is about self-uncling. So
Self-uncle. So Jeff puts this show topic, uncling yourself. And I'm reading it as uncling yourself. I'm like, uncling yourself? What does clinging yourself mean? What is it? And he goes, no, uncling yourself. And I'm like, uncling? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, haven't you everyone twist your arm and you say uncle, say uncle. And I was like, oh, uncling yourself. I'm like, I've never heard of that before. He goes, yeah, I just made it up.
It made sense for the episode, though.
Made sense. Oh my gosh. You know what? I was going to say that I should go through shout outs, but I don't have them prepared. So let's try to get that into the next episode. But for those of you who have not joined the closed Facebook group, please join the closed Facebook group. We got tons of new members, like new names almost daily. It's fantastic.
And anytime now, I will start posting the stuff I want to in there again.
Yeah, didn't you say you were going to post something about Eric? And I don't know that you did.
Yeah, I was planning to, and I've totally just, it's been insane.
Yeah.
With my work recently. So Insane.
So the closed Facebook group is facebook.com/groups/Undercroft. Is that about right?
That's almost correct. It's
close.
facebook.com/groups/Undercroft.
Yeah, it was pretty close. Just search for Undercroft and you'll find it, the Fantasy World Builders Undercroft.
The fantasy version, not
yes.
The dead version.
Not the blacksmith version.
It would make for a good a good zombie show. I think.
What's that?
I'm just making like it would be like a good zombie or supernatural kind of show. It's the Undercroft.
Oh, just as the title, you mean?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I think that could fly. Someone wants to zip that one out there, get on WB or something. Let us know. We start the Undercroft verse.
I'd be down for that. So this is kind of a self-care episode, and I really like this one because, I mean, certainly I know I have gone through it in stages of my life where I beat myself up, and I'm too hard on myself. I'm a lot better about it now, but certainly there were times in my life where I made myself miserable.
Yeah. And one thing I want to get to is, ultimately everyone here is human, we believe. Michael might be a lizard person, but he won't.
I won't cop to it.
Deny.
Not until we're ready to take over. Then I'll be happy to shed this skin
and show us how the world is flat too. I think.
Yes.
And the thing is, if people meet me, they would probably think I'm a very laid back person. I've always
thought that.
Yeah. And in general, I am. I'm very empathetic, and I can understand why people have issues. And I'm in general, I'm pretty laid back about it. Myself, if I consider it a stupid mistake, which is basically any mistake I make, I will beat the hell out of myself mentally. And that's a problem. And it was one of those things where recently, just like work has been doing good, like balance page wise. We've been growing a lot. And we're just starting to really maybe grow into an actual real business finally. And so, but it's sitting there and like everything is not the way I want it to be. I want to kind of do it all myself. And literally I kind of took the job I did to take a lot. My wife was doing that to herself and I told her to stop it. She was being silly. And then I started doing it to myself. And even when we get some people to help us, I very, very, very tough times letting go of certain things or whatever that I shouldn't be doing. And if nothing else, it's like, you know, with Eric and lack of daycare, which we don't want to do daycare anyway, but it's like, I really have very limited time, you know, so it's like, I really need to be focusing on managing stuff and less on actually doing stuff. But I like doing stuff too, so it's tough, you know.
I think I was a little surprised when you were ready to let go of editing and let me have it. Not a lot surprised, but a little.
Yes. I was just getting so overwhelmed. You know, I needed to let go of that. And it's because I still do my wife's show.
So if you have any issues with the episodes editing wise, you guys can yell at me. You don't have to yell at Jeff anymore.
Any mistake that you guys notice on the episode is Michael's fault.
Yeah, pretty much. But my editing's pretty tight though. Like I don't want to, you know, make my own arms sore patting myself on the back, but you know, I'm pretty diligent about the editing.
Is an illicit toucher of himself on his back.
And you should, and honestly, the past couple of episodes, there's been some intricate editing. You probably don't notice it, and you're not meant to, but there was definitely some intricate editing in the past 2 episodes.
Very good, very good. It tries to make me sound intelligent, which
that's really the hard thing. That's what I'm shooting for. Cutting out the stuff that cuts away from how people might see you.
But really, it's one of these things, you know, we do talk about though. You know, we talk about fear and the stuff. Your internal voice, the thing that you tell yourself, and it's like your id, I think, is what like they call it in psychology, right? It's not controllable. It's stuff that just happens. You are your own worst enemy. You know, you will psych yourself out of doing things that you want to do. You will prevent yourself, you know. Say, I know so many people who are like, I'm tied down to this job. This job is horrible. But then you try and give them ways to get out of it, and they're like, oh, I can't do that. Oh, no. Because they're comfortable where they're at. They don't like it at a level, but at a different level, they're okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're describing me right now.
and personally, I think if you're happy in your life, that's the goal. You know, there's I can't remember. I think it's the guy who wrote Minimalism. I have to look this up now because I was not planning to talk about this. He says you have 4 burners that you have lit at all times, and I don't remember what they are. But it's like,
my name's Jeff. I'm going to give you an analogy that I don't know.
I don't know, but it's like work, family, spiritual, and one other one, and
self, maybe.
Maybe self, you know, and he's like, if you want to be successful, you have to turn one of those burners off. If you want to be super successful, you have to choose 2 of those burners to turn off. So I would suggest, and we'll try and get it in the show notes if I can, but if not, just find the book. I think it's Minimalist. I have to ask my wife. We were literally just talking about this, but the idea is for you to be successful, the more successful you are, one's friends. So one's self, family, friends, and spiritual, I believe.
Not work.
Well, no, one's work, not spiritual. I'm just throwing that one in there, I think. But it's like, so, you know, and boy, I don't get to see a lot of my friends right now. You know, I wonder, did I make that choice intentionally or unintentionally?
I don't see any friends. Like, I really, like, I have one friend that I talk to almost daily. My brother, and then I have my good friend Chris. I talk to them on a weekly basis, roughly, and then you and I talk weekly. But that's about it.
But like, I'm really more of a stalker. So,
well, you know, I knew I'd regret telling you my address. And of course, you know, my wife. You know, like she and I spend the most time together, so like she's my best friend. But yeah, I wouldn't say I have much. I mean, there's lots. I've built my friend. I don't want to call it a circle, but I've built the relationships with my friends in a way that, you know, I can not talk to them for a long time. You know, most of my friends understand that if I don't talk to them for a long time and then we talk, like most of my friends, I could call right now and say, let's go do something. And, you know, it'd be fine. Whereas some people feel that they need to have maintenance on their friendships all the time. And some friendships are like that. I get that. And others aren't. But, you know, let's segue back into what we are. We're not really talking about your friendships. We're talking about you. And
yes.
we're talking about.
But it's this idea, though, is like we set ourselves up. So the things that we find important, sometimes we disregard. Sometimes we do it intentionally. Sometimes it's unintentional. But it's like there's only, and this is what we do talk about. There's only so much of us, but then our mind is the thing that always comes back. And what it says is almost never true, but is grounded in enough reality to freak us out. It'll frighten us. It'll make us hate ourselves.
Well,
I don't really quite rise to the level of self-loathing, but I will. You'll
get nasty with yourself.
Myself. Oh God. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, though. You have to get, like, what you're saying is where you'll have some negative self-talk or a negative self-opinion, and it's not true, but you have evidence to back it up. and that's where, you're like, oh, well, or you'll be like, oh, well, I messed this thing up at work today. Well, that means I'm not good at my job. I'm bad at my job. And you're telling yourself you're bad at your job when you're not bad at your job. You're great at your job, but you made a mistake. We're all human. We all make mistakes. And even the
screw up at work today and my life is over.
Yeah. Whatever you turn it in. But see, I was about to get into that. That's a secondary thing where where a thing occurs, or we think a given thing is a given way, and we interpret it differently. So I'll give you a really easy example. My parents didn't hug me a lot as a kid. So i.e. that must mean I'm not huggable and not lovable. So I'm not a lovable person. So people don't love me. Mm-hmm. So I'm unlovable. Well, no, it's just your parents weren't touchy-feely people and they didn't hug you. That's true. That they didn't hug you a lot as a child. That is the only fact that's there. You have turned the fact that they hugged you infrequently, which didn't mean they didn't love you. They might have loved you crazy, but just didn't.
Once again, too, maybe they did hug you, just not as much as you wanted.
Right, but no, I'm saying let's say that is a hard fact. Sure. Let's say they didn't hug you frequently, but you've turned they didn't hug you frequently into you're unlovable. And these are not, one thing doesn't equal the other. You've just created a chain, and you've used that original piece of information as the evidence to prove the secondary piece of information that you've completely fabricated. Mm-hmm. And we do this to ourselves all the time. And that's where
I like to think about is your self system is good at alerting you that there's a problem. It's not always good at telling you what the actual problem is. It's not really good at telling you what the consequence is. Because usually whatever it's like, I can't write. You probably can, but maybe not in the way you want to, or maybe you can even write in the way you want to, but you're afraid to share it. That's a different thing, So once again, when voices go off and they yell and they scream at you, if they call you bad names or they try and frighten you from doing something, it's literally there's something there, and it's always worth looking at. But the thing is, you can't trust a thing you tell yourself. You think you are the most convincing liar to yourself, and you need to be, and that's how you function in the world, which is kind of because humans aren't made that good. So sometimes we have to fool ourselves to get through the day, because sometimes a lot of us who live in Western countries where food is plentiful and life isn't as good as we want to. It's probably never as bad as we think it is, but we feel it's worse than that because we have time to focus on it because we have enough. We have enough. You can focus on problems, and we're not really designed to do that. We're designed to survive. And so our Neanderthal minds, our Neolithic minds is probably a better term to use. We can't quite cope with it, so we have to do things to get through sometimes. So that's good. But once you know it and you sit there and go, okay, is there really a problem here? What's the real problem? Okay, now the consequences tell me, is that the real thing? Sometimes, it's like you'll die if you do that. It's crazy talk when it's about like getting up and reading a book once a day. But when it's about skydiving, well, there is technically a risk of death. So maybe it's worth investigating how can you do it safely if you want to. Mm-hmm. And so,
I like a more applicable example, like, talking in front of people, mm-hmm. or just going to talk to someone you don't know. These are things that a lot of us can empathize with, where it's like, oh, I can't do that. I can't go talk to that person, or I can't go speak in front of this crowd. Yeah, you absolutely can. You
And that's
totally
when, like,
can.
in the work I do at Bookkeeper Training School with my wife, that's when we hear all of the time, like, I will die.
I will
If
die
I
if
will
I
die
talk. If
have
I
to
walk
talk
out
about
there, I will
If I
die.
put myself out there, my life will be ruined. No.
I love talking in front of people. Like, I'm great in front of a crowd. Like, I really am.
Yes, the audience will find it hard to believe. Michael and I both love talking.
I know, shocker, right? But it's like Jeff and I have both had public speaking training. Like, we've both been through seminars where you have to get up in front of like 300, 400 people and be really vulnerable. And I'm very comfortable doing that now. Like,
Yeah.
I got no problems doing that now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, how we do it on the show, and in theory, we can't delete this.
Yeah, it's out there forever. I don't often think about that, but
We
it's
could
true.
delete it. It'll
Yeah.
never go away.
It'll never go away. So the thing about, self-loathing and being your own worst enemy, you have to get that a lot of your thoughts are lies.
You are
Like, start understanding, like, if there's negative self-talk, and it doesn't even have to be significant negative self-talk. I'm not talking like the obvious stuff, like everybody hates me, I'm unlovable, I'm not talented. Like, these are big ones that are really easy to see and check yourself on. But there might be a lot of little ones where I didn't write any.
Like when
I didn't
you
write.
something that's foolish and you call yourself stupid.
Yeah. Yep.
Over and over and over again. That's when I'm a criminal with. Yeah.
I didn't write anything good today. I didn't write anything good this year. Like, odds are you wrote a lot of great stuff this year, but you're being overly critical. You know what I mean? So you gotta learn how, like, if you do make a mistake, because we all do, and we're all our own worst critics. I have found many times where I'll make a mistake and I will think it was colossal and very easily noticed, and everybody saw it and made a big deal out of it. And sometimes I inquire and find out that no one noticed. Nobody picked up on it. So it's not that big a deal. It's usually not as big as you think,
Yeah,
So you have to,
this one.
you have to be able to forgive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when you make those mistakes, it's okay. It is okay to make mistakes. It's okay to make big mistakes. But it's not okay not to forgive yourself for them. Like, you have to learn, and Jeff and I were just talking about this the other day, the concept of grace. It's very, very, Christian thought, but I absolutely love it. I'm Christian. Jeff, you're Christian, right?
I grew up Christian.
You grew up Christian. The concept of grace, the concept of forgiveness, a lot of people have a hard time learning forgiveness for others, and that's usually the focus. Learn how to forgive. There's very little focus on self-forgiveness, and I think that that's so important. Like, when you learn how to forgive yourself and give yourself some grace, some compassion, some understanding is what I mean when I say grace. Not just forgiveness, but be compassionate for yourself and be understanding to yourself. You are only human, or lizard, and that's okay. Like, we're flawed. And that's fine. We can work with this. You know what I mean?
A good example I could think of is I used to do a lot of acting in college.
Acting.
And I was very much a character actor. I loved being silly on stage. And like, literally, I was a woman on stage. And
You were what?
Yeah.
You were what?
A woman. I was Matthew Bannock's mother.
On stage. Okay.
And and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. But the thing, you would be up there and
wait. Now, is that to say you were pretending to be a fictional character, and that fiction, or you were literally pretending to be his mom, like, his mom, and you were emulating his mom, a fictional mother to Matthew.
He was my son.
Fair enough.
His character was my character's son.
And his character was your character's. Okay, so it wasn't Matthew. He just happened to be the actor playing your son.
Yes.
Fair enough. Okay, got it.
His mother.
Got it.
And his mother thought that was hilarious. And but it was not at all trying to mock her.
Well, not mock, but if you were, fair enough.
Had nothing to do with it.
Got it.
But it was so funny. You'll make mistakes on stage, and the lights are blaring, and the makeup's on, and and you know you're supposed to say something, and the person, they're waiting for their cue. They're waiting for their time to step in. They don't know if it's even a dramatic pause or not. For you, and then for that person, it can feel like a very long time, especially for you. It can feel like an eternity. And you can have several of those during performance, and then you're talking afterwards, after the curtain call, you go out and you start interacting with people in the audience. And, oh, that was so awesome. And I was horrible. They're like, what? What are you talking about? Oh, and this scene, and they're like, I thought that scene was fat. What do you mean? There was a problem there? Oh, wow, I didn't even know. And
stage performance is a very unique example of this, because you, as the performer, know the mistakes, and the other people have no idea unless they're really intimately familiar with the material.
Waiting for your line.
Right. Right.
And
but
they'll be really good, and they'll pick it up. Like, it's like they think you're pausing, so they'll wait. And then they're like, they will then try and work their line to start with what your line should have been.
Right.
To get to
their next part. Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Your example has a layered application to this discussion, because that's what life is like. Like, and I don't mean, the world's a stage. I mean that everyone doesn't know that you're making mistakes. So, like, if you're walking into a conversation and you're saying the wrong thing, what you think is the wrong thing, that doesn't mean everyone else is thinking that. Yeah. They don't know what's going on in your mind. You don't get to know what's going on in theirs. So you can beat yourself up, or you can just be in the moment. You can be present to what's actually occurring, or at least what you can actually perceive in the moment, as opposed to being stuck in your head, beating yourself up.
I think the irony is, the more you can stay in the moment and try to interact at that level, the less likely you are to get trapped in these kinds of things. There's a great quote, sort of addressing this, when you do make a mistake, that Brendon Burchard uses that I love. It's like, okay, when you make a mistake, say sorry when you have to, forgive yourself, and then get back to living fully. That's the point. It's done. I'm sorry I screwed that one up myself, and move on. And it's also good in your own life too. If you make a mistake with someone else, apologize heartfully.
Yeah, acknowledge it.
And then move on. Because you can't take back. You can never go back and undo a mistake. There might be actions you can take to mitigate it or make it better. But ultimately, the most important thing is to live your life fully, and realize that you're going to make more mistakes in your life. And don't call yourself, don't take it out yourself too much. Learn from it the best you can.
Yeah, that's the power in it, is the learning from it. And also, like, if you can have this compassion, understanding, and grace and forgiveness with others as well, it only benefits you and your relationships. One of the big things that I like about the concept of living in the present and being forgiving is being able to really take, and I'm not saying it's easy, being able to take that on in your relationships. I've made mistakes in my marriage. I'm not perfect. I know. Yeah. Hard to believe.
as a married person, anyone who's married should understand that everyone in a marriage makes mistakes.
So here's our approach to relationship mistakes. Acknowledge it, be honest about it, talk about how it made both of us feel, and we have to forgive. And when that forgiveness occurs, it can never be held against the person again. Because then you're no longer living in the present, and you're not living into your future.
The mistake shifts at that point.
Well, you're living into your past at that point. So I did a thing. We discussed it. We talked about the feelings. We worked through it, and then forgiveness was granted. But at that point, that thing can never hamper us again. And if it comes up again, then if it was her, then she gets to squash it. If it was me, then I get to squash it. I get to be like, look, we talked about this. We've forgiven each other for this. We're not allowed to let this hurt us anymore.
And the truth is, like I said, in that scenario, let's say Michael and I have this scenario going on, and I get mad at Michael for something he did last week. Ultimately, that's my mistake now.
Do we ever really get mad at each other, though?
Us, no.
I don't think so.
I don't remember an occurrence of that happening, but I'm saying in theory, like if we were having an argument now about something we did last week,
Yeah.
because I was mad at you for that. If we had resolved that last week, I'm in the wrong now. It has nothing to do with what Michael did even.
Well, let's not get into right and wrong about it. My point about it is that if you haven't fully forgiven, then it's still affecting you, and maybe further discussion needs to happen.
And maybe it does. And I don't mean right and wrong in a moral sense, more in the sense that I am acting unjust if we got past it last week and I either didn't really get past it.
Well, that's what I was about to say. If you didn't really get past it, then it still needs to be worked through. Yeah. And
it's done. It just means I'm at fault in that scenario. Not that I need to be punished, but I have to realize as a human, if you can realize that in those scenarios when you're still mad at someone for something that you've worked through, that gives you a lot of power to go, whoa, and I can turn that off now. When I can hear myself getting there, I can turn it off.
Yeah, when you can get present to that.
To myself.
To yourself.
Back.
I was just about to say, I want to turn this back into the internal. So like, you guys got to get that forgiving yourself and giving yourself that grace. It's not an automatic thing, and it's not a thing where if you do, like, let's say there's a thing that you do, like I'm going to get specific to make examples easy to understand. Let's say I say to myself, I'm a bad writer. And every day I say to myself, I'm a bad writer. And then I go, oh, you know what? I forgive myself. I'm not a bad writer. I'm going to forgive myself for saying those things about me. And I'm going to try to get past it. Just because even if you have an epiphany on a thing, even if you have a moment where you it really clicks and you're zen with a thing and you let it go, just because you did it that one time doesn't mean that it's complete for you. You have to get that living that, I'm just going to use the word, living that transformation means that you have to transform it every time it comes back up for you. Like an example in my life is like, I had a relationship that ended, and I still don't really know all that occurred and why that relationship ended. I'll probably never know. And every now and then in my mind, I pick it up like a Rubik's Cube to be solved. Like, I'm going to figure this out. If I just put the logical pieces together, I will understand this problem from my past. Me living the transition of understanding that and giving myself the grace to forgiveness and let it go means that every time I pick up that cube in my mind, I realize I'm picking up the cube again. I'm not going to get anywhere with it. Put it down, let it go, accept that I'm never going to know. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. It's way easier now, but it's way easier now because I have picked up and put down that mental cube probably 100 times. And you may have to do that. You may have to tell yourself every day,
1,000 times,
every day that you have a negative thing that you want to work on and you want to let go of and get past and forgive yourself for and be gracious with yourself with. You may need to, even after you've had the aha moment, the epiphany moment where you can say, I'm done with this. I let it go. I'm now past this thing. You may need to revisit it still again and again and again and again and again. So it's not that once you've figured it out, you have solved that thing. What it is once you've figured it out, you'll be able to get past it real fast in the future.
As soon as you can recognize it. Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of people don't talk about in the self-help books and in the like self-realization stuff. They usually just try to get you to the aha moment, not realizing that there's a lot of work past the aha moment. That's easier work. It's way easier.
Never 21 days.
But it's not, you haven't solved it and everything's good. Like I had a friend that made fun of me and it was so funny. Because one day we were talking about something that I was dealing with, and he's like, you get that you have this thing about problems in your life. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you intellectualize all of it. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know that. And he's like, but here's the thing. For you, it's about identifying the problem. You want to identify the problem and really understand what the problem is. And once you think you've understood the problem, you think that you've solved it. And that's not what's happening. All you've done is identified it. And I'm like, yeah, I totally do that. Where I'm like, oh, now I get it. I haven't done anything to change it. I haven't done anything to improve my life, but now I understand.
And I understand it. And sometimes it's all you need too.
Sometimes, but sometimes there's, you have
Sometimes you do need to do more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know, and the last point here I kind of like to.
Which one? Your last one or my last one? Because I want to do my last one.
You do your last one. I like it. Go ahead. Do your
Well, you do the one before it, which is also mine. But
accept what is and what isn't, but do not make those things right or wrong. They just are. They just exist. And I see you're saying you have to distance yourself from the problem. And there could be a right or wrong attached to it, but it's ultimately irrelevant, unless there's potential criminal ramifications. Or civil,
or hurting people. Like my big thing is just don't hurt people.
Just don't hurt people. That's largely my thing. It's the non-aggression principle, as people call it. Is you never exude violence upon someone else unless you are at risk of being hurt imminently.
Yeah. My whole thing about this is that first line: accept what is and what isn't. So. In your life, things are the way they are. Doesn't mean you can't change them. You absolutely have the ability to influence change in your life. Mm-hmm. Some things are the way they are. Some things aren't the way they aren't. If you can accept that, you are one step closer to changing it.
Yeah.
So sometimes people are like, oh, I just can't accept that. It shouldn't be that way. Well, maybe you're right. Maybe it shouldn't be that way. But accept that it is that way. Yeah. And then instead of getting caught staring at the problem, acknowledge how things are and how things aren't in your life.
Yeah. And it was like the way I was for years at work, it's like I was working for other people and I was never comfortable in that position.
Working for others,
confident. You mean? Yeah. Yes. Doing what other people tell me to do. Never been good at that. But the thing was, I did it for years, but I was comfortable at doing it. Mm-hmm. I had to get to a point to myself where I go, you know what? It's worth the risk for me to try something else, and until I could get there, I would complain about it, but I'd usually have to just let it go because you know what? I have no other choices. I could go learn to do a different job. And I went through all of those arguments with myself too. Like, oh, I'm going to go do this now. I'm going to go do that now. And ultimately I never did because I didn't want to do this or that because really it was the same problem ultimately. Ultimately I was an entrepreneur who was trapped in a corporate world and those things just don't mix. They do. You can survive it and I could have been comfortable doing it, but I could have never been as happy as I am now. Even if I don't end up making as much money as I did, I will be much more happy now. And forget the additional kid along the way. That's different to the point. But
I find I'm real zen with that in my life right now too, because I'm at an interesting crossroads in my career where I have opportunities to make more money, and I may not take those opportunities. I'm still not sure, because I'm happy right now.
There's a great line. What was the movie? Dead Again, I believe.
Good movie.
Dead Again. And there was a great line, and it was a throwaway moment where Kenneth Branagh keeps going to a therapist, not defrocked. That's a priest. He lost his license to be a psychologist due to a relationship issue. But this detective would always go to him and ask him questions because he was really good with the psychology stuff. And he kept fidgeting all of the time with cigarettes. He would grab one and put them down and grab one and put them down. And he'd fidget with the thing. And finally, Robin Williams looks at him and goes, you know what? You're either a smoker or you're not. Pick which one you are and be it. And where that's not necessarily, the advice you might give to someone smoking, but the point is valid. You are something or you're not something. When you keep struggling with it, find out what you really are in that scenario and go with that. Don't rush to that judgment because, once again, I always tell you that your voice loves to lie to you. That's why I think midlife crises end up happening is people they have this gut instinct that something's going wrong, and I have to have that Corvette, and then they buy the Corvette and they aren't happy and they have a lot of debt because they own a Corvette.
And and understand that you have agency there. If you're in that waffling thing, like you can just pick one of them and be that thing.
Mhm.
I have one last point on our list, and it's a little off subject, but it's one of my favorite gospels, and I've said it a ton of times. I've probably only said it 2 or 3 times on the show. I mean, there's like
personal gospel, not a religious one.
yes, there. I mean, there's like what 7 billion people on the planet at this point, roughly.
I can't count them.
It's roughly 7 billion. Don't anybody hold me to that number, but roughly. And here's the thing: statistically speaking, with 7 billion people on the planet, not everyone is going to like you, and that's okay. Because I also dovetail this into honesty, because hundreds of thousands of people, plenty of people to fill up your entire lifetime are going to love you for exactly who you are if you just keep showing people who you are. It might take you a while to meet all those people. I won't lie. It took me a while to meet a bunch of people that liked me, and that's okay. But just be you.
70 years.
Be well. I mean, more like 80. If you're counting lizard years. So,
That's right.
But you're enough. Like you're fantastic. You're enough. Be you. No one else can be you. You be you.
If you have a problem, if you literally have a problem with something about yourself, if it rises to the point, make a plan and change it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, I mean, I've done so much self-evolving over the years, like so much.
That's how I turned into a lizard person.
Yes. Well, lizards don't evolve a whole lot. But there was a point in my life where I did not like myself. It was a good chunk of time. I did not like myself, and I did a lot of work on myself, and I really like myself now. I mean, and I know I'm not alone. I know there's a lot of people who have been through that process or still struggling in that process, and I want you to know that it's okay. You can do it. You can get through it. You're fantastic. And it's worth the work. It really is, because I'm such a happy person now. I'm a very, ask Jeff. Am I ever in a bad mood? Like,
you've had bad days, kind of bad moods, but not really.
Well, I get irritated like anybody, but
you know what I'm saying? It's like you get to that point where it's like you're at the end of your rope. But I've never really seen you like even stay there. It's like if we just BS for 2 minutes, you'll be fine. Yeah.
That's the irony, though, is like there's been days where I've been really in a rough way, and you and I start joking around, and it immediately changes my mood. Mm-hmm. So like I really have to acknowledge the positive impact that you have on my life. The power of Jeff. That should have been the name of this episode.
The domain is
the power of Jeff.
Available.
Yeah, nobody locked that one down. That Jeff wants that one. You might have to do that before I edit and post the show. the power of Jeff. But the like even when I have like we were just talking about this the other day, my wife and I have like 1, maybe 2 days worth of bad moods a year. Like the other day I did have a bad mood, and my wife was like really thrown by it. She's like, "You were in a funk all day." She's like, "Are you okay? Like what's going on?" I'm like, "I was just having a funk." And I have them
sometimes you just need that to process.
Right. I have them so infrequently that it was weird for her to see it. I'm like, I get this way now and then.
It's a good compliment, right?
It is, but because through my teenage years, it was like every other day. I didn't like myself. I was not happy with tons of things about myself, but like you can get there. Like it's a process. It's something that you have great power over, and I believe in you guys. You guys can do it, and we want you to forgive yourselves. We want you to like yourselves. We want you to understand that you are talented, and we can't wait to see what you're going to give to the world.
As I close this one down here, before we get to the world building task here, I just want to point out, I just thought about this, it's like when someone tells me like, when you have the discussions with people, not so much at my age, but when I was younger about, who do you fall in love with and who do you get married to and stuff like that. My suggestion is, always to people, it's like marry someone who, if you, literally can't see them, you can enjoy your time with them, because however they look at the point you get married will not be how they look in 40 years, will not be how they look in the 70 years. And if and you're gonna be spending all of your time with this person. You better really like them.
Mm.
You gotta like that person. But I was just thinking in this conversation, though, I'm like, that's wrong. There's
That's
one
wrong.
person you're gonna spend more time with.
You.
That's you.
Yeah. True. And we make out really good on that one because we're both so good looking and so fun to be around.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's like once you're talking about, like, people won't necessarily like you. It's like, for me, I've always been that person where I get along with a huge range of people.
Me too.
My wife calls me a king geek because I can sit down with the nerdiest of nerd people who got beat up their entire life and get along and have great conversations. And then I can go be in a room with jocks who hate D&D, world building. That's not as common anymore. But when I was a kid, that was more common. But I would get along flawlessly with pretty much everyone. So I would always be shocked a lot of times when I found people who didn't actually like me. And luckily, I was never the person to try and strive for people's affection, because that's a trap I think people could fall into.
Yeah, big time.
But it would like take me back. Like, really? You don't like me? And it wasn't an arrogance thing. It just like,
you're just
I
surprised.
like talking with people, and I'm very empathetic, so I can kind of get into their space and have good conversations. Some people don't like that either.
That's funny because I have heard similar such things about me. The thing that comes up for me, same sort of thing. I have had a couple of people throughout my life point out they're being impressed by my ability to speak to very intellectual, like college educated people. And I'm not like, I don't mean to imply that I am super intelligent. I don't have a college education. I'd like to think that I'm a pretty intelligent guy and that I can hang with a very smart crowd. But I'm also willing to admit, like, if I'm in that smart crowd and they're talking about something that I don't know, I'll just say, like, I don't know what that is. Will you tell me what that is? And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a crowd. I can hang out with just people who are really not, well schooled, but they know things that I don't, and I'll treat them the same way and be like, yeah, I don't know what that is. Will you tell me what that is? I just don't have experience with whatever that thing is. But I've had a couple friends throughout my years tell me they were impressed by seeing me talk to people in that, scenario, and seeing me talk to people who are like real streetwise and, much more, salt of the earth type of people will say. And I pride myself on trying to treat people, no matter where they're coming from, with respect. And what you're saying is where you were like surprised when people didn't like you. See, my experience has been different because a lot of people have not liked me, and I understand, and I get it. And I know that I am a particular flavor, and I'm not everybody's favorite flavor. I get that.
I guess I'm just vanilla.
But that goes back to what my last point there, where it's not everyone's going to like you, and that's okay. Like, you have to get to the point where you like you, and just accept that not everyone's going to, and that's fine. Like, just go meet the next person.
As like the small business side of me, when I talk to other small business people, is you have to know who you're selling to, because not everyone is going to need or want your product.
Yeah.
The idea is you have to figure out who the people are that do, and talk to them.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the trick, But now, Michael, for the world building task.
So, world building task. This can be a short story. This could be a book, whichever, Create a character of yourself, but I want you to make them the hero.
Mm-hmm. That's right. The thing of this is like our own world building version of positive self-talk, right? Make it into a story, BS if you have to, because remember, ultimately, the more you lie to yourself about how much you like and are good, you will start to believe it the same way you'll believe it when you hate yourself. So just flip it on its head.
Yeah. Tell yourself the things that you want other people to tell you. Like, if you want people to like you, start saying that you like yourself.
That's right. And ultimately, and for the real world task here, is you want to retrain yourself for self-respect. And ultimately,
it's a good one.
And here's the thing I want to be clear is sometimes there are really things in our lives that won't allow us to get there. And if you have one of those things, if you think you have one of those things, it's worth talking to someone else about. Maybe it's a religious person or a,
family member,
friend,
mentor,
someone who you won't feel threatened by having the conversation with, or even a professional, if it's a psychiatrist, whatever works for you. Go there. Don't be afraid to ask other people for help. We're humans. I'm a libertarian. I believe in individual rights and the world would be better for all more individual. But ultimately, that doesn't take away from the fact that we are societal bound creatures. We have need and desire to interact with other people in our lives. And working out our problems is one of the ways we can do that. And you know what? There's other people who've had similar problems, and sometimes it's just about getting it off your chest. Sometimes that's enough. To yourself is not always enough. So if you need help from someone, there's nothing wrong with it, get help from whoever you think can help you. And if they say, hey, you should try something else, if you respect them enough to talk to them, go talk to the other person, give the other person a shot that they suggest.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you on episode 3. Or no.
4.
We'll see you on episode 4.
And 2. If you go back in time, we'll see you there as well.
Yeah. You could go back in time to episode 340. I know that sounds like forward in time because we're on episode 3, but it's actually back in time. And we'll see you there too.
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.